Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. The views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live action role play scenario. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton. First, be sure to check out our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. That is also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, where we feature podcasts from some of your favorite content creators. Also, be sure to download all our podcast episodes directly through Spreaker. That's always free for you. We're booking guests for February. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. And be sure to watch the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana, available on Tubi and multiple streaming platforms. Today I want to welcome Dr. Sharnael Wolverton. She seamlessly blends naturopathic medicine, spirituality, and quantum science to empower individuals on their journey to wholeness. As the founder of True TV and author of 5 groundbreaking books, she offers a unique perspective on achieving optimal health and unlocking human potential. Dr. Sharnael, welcome. How you doing?
I am doing wonderful. How are you doing today, Chris?
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to learning about you and the work you're doing and getting your insights into this reality and what we're really doing here, what it's all about, as we collectively become more aware of the other side of reality and how much illusion is being presented to us within our perception and the level of negative programming we're subjected to every day, because that's the way our material world has been designed. And because so many people are waking up at the same time, there's a spectrum of theories being considered, some of them very positive, others not so much. And I like to explore as many possibilities as possible. I have guests from all different perspectives on to share their insights into this reality. I'd love to explore those possibilities with you, as well as learn about some of the healing modalities you work with, and just get your insights about the layers of reality beyond our limited perception here. But this is your first time on. Before we get into this, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you down your path.
I am originally from Montana. I'm currently living in Louisiana right now, which is completely not the same
We're at in
as
Louisiana. I was born and
Montana.
raised in Louisiana.
Where at?
Houma, a town about 45 minutes south of New Orleans.
Okay, I'm in Baton Rouge. Well, I'm in Denham
Oh,
Springs, so
yeah,
you're probably familiar.
definitely.
I'm right outside of Baton Rouge. That's awesome. I did not know that you're in. So, are you still in
No, I'm
Louisiana?
in Colorado now, but I was born
Okay.
there, spent most of my life there.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's where I am
Right.
right now, and been here for 30 years now. Interesting. I leave and I come back and I leave, I come back. Um, but yeah, my dad was military, and so we hopped around a lot growing up. Lived overseas, lived mostly in the northern parts of the United States, Tacoma, New York, um, Washington is Tacoma, and Montana. And my dad's from Michigan, so we lived there a little bit. So yeah, I've just been kind of hopping around. My background, I did ministry, conference speaking for 17 years, and then went back to school and finished up my doctorate in naturopathic medicine, and started to practice and do a lot, actually more online than I do in person. And I was doing that way before it was popular. Started doing online things with consultations just because I would be at this conference and there'd be 20,000 people there, and I would speak about whatever X, Y, and Z. And then I'd come home and my answering machine would just be full of like, hey, what about this? What about that? And because I was long distance, we would just set up phone calls. Now we got Zooms, but that's pretty kind of more mainstream now, that since we had that thing that happened a few years ago, and medical people are even doing that now. But I do have a practice here in Louisiana as well, and just I write books and do online courses and teach. And I like the spiritual stuff, the paranormal stuff, the miracle realm, the quantum realm, the neuroscience realm. I like it all, just kind of goes together for me. So, my favorite saying is you can't pee in the pool and hope it doesn't get everywhere. There's not a smoking section. We are very electronic, multi-dimensional beings, as you know, and there's a lot of different realities. And then there's also, this whole program that, if the thyroid is going on, then we're going to deal with that. And it's like, you know what? Let's look at emotions. Let's look at the rest of the body. Let's look at what's going on in the world. There's so much to that. And so I like to look at everything, and we do biofeedback and that kind of stuff long distance as well. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Excellent. Were you always aware of the spiritual, metaphysical side of our reality, or was there anything in particular, any certain events that brought you to these understandings?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few things. I'll mention one. I had, like, I guess, an encounter at maybe 5 years old. I wish I had known exactly when that was, but it was an Easter Sunday. I had like this hologram type thing that came into my room at a young age, and believe it or not, it was an image of Jesus. I did not know who that guy was. I felt it literally to the core of my being, and it wasn't until later that I found out who that guy is. And I don't consider myself religious at all. Um, I do have a Bible now. I have multiple Bibles, and I actually went to seminary and did the whole thing. I went that path for a bit. But was more interested in the supernatural part of what the Bible has, as far as, being able to bilocate, living eternally, healings that are instant and or over time. Just some of the cooler things that really got my attention, of just like, wow, there seems to be more than this life that we're being presented with and or taught, like within school and what have you. I think it should be
Yeah,
taught,
right.
like, way from the beginning, that we should just be looking at all the different paranormal realities, and, be taught how to do miracles, and maybe even how to write a check and get your debt done. Just some major logistics instead of some of the BS that we get programmed in with the school situation. Um, but yeah, I've had like missing time. I've had different encounters where beings have showed up in my living room or outside my window, and my daughters have seen it too, especially my oldest. One of the beings came and told me that I was pregnant. Um, that they've come for different times to tell me when it's time to change a job that I was maybe fearful of and needed a little nudge to go in a different direction. Um, my daughter even came home the day after that encounter, specifically with the pregnancy, and she came home and she had this like coloring thing that she had at school, and it was like a rip out from a color book, and it was like this angel looking thing pushing a stroller with a baby in it. And she came home and brought it to me. She's like, Mom, you're pregnant. And she would talk about these winged birdman And she doesn't see them anymore or talk about them anymore. She's 23, but when she was little, I think the veil was really thin for her too, growing up small, and it was even interesting for us to hear some of the things that she would say. But definitely like a star seed or some kind of situation. But yeah. So what about you? Have you had some crazy stuff happen? Like what got you in? Because you're doing a whole
Oh, yeah.
podcast on this
I've
stuff.
always been interested since a very young age in the paranormal and occult, magic, aliens, extraterrestrials, all of that. But for the longest time, I was just in the matrix, sleeping, going along with life until about 2012. Something just came over me. I was going through some rough situations and I became interested in these things again. And I didn't have any personal experiences until I decided that it was time for me to explore that because it wasn't coming to me. So I decided to go to it and I started with meditation. And that's when I had my first quote unquote contact experience with an intelligence that I currently understand as my higher self. But there were following experiences with possibly different intelligences, and that led to several experiences with psychedelics, which led to synchronicities in my waking life, which led to incredible understandings and the journey I'm on right now, which occasionally does have what I would consider contact. Not that I would see the beings, not that I would be physically taken or interacting, but communication, downloads, if you will. That is mainly the type of experiences that I've had. But when it comes to non human intelligences, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call these things, I think at this point it's really impossible for us to put labels on these. I don't think we really know exactly what we're dealing with here. I know there's probably a spectrum of intelligences. I like to think of it as possibly an ecosystem of life just beyond our perception, things that can interact with us. But to the best of your ability, what is your understanding of these beings?
Honestly, that's such a great question. And that is a question that I have asked myself for years. And I don't know if I have the answer.
Good
It's
answer.
you know, when it happened at the first, my only language at the time was like angels, right? But the word angel just means messenger. So that can mean anything. And then I started thinking, well, maybe this is off planet. And then I thought about like, what if it's future
Right,
me
right,
or
right, right.
something? Or like, it could be my ancestors who have passed, but or ancestors in the future, who are coming back to say, hey, be careful about these things, or hey, you want to go this way to keep the timeline, or but yeah, I've asked myself that. That's a really good question because, and I would love to know if you know, but they do appear high tech. If I could say that, they do seem to have a technology that we're not been given as far as like on the front end. I think all the shadow type governments are messing around with a lot. And I was actually part of Montauk project as a kid, and maybe something that has something to do with that. Um, I don't know, but they were like light beings. They were iridescent. They were almost like I couldn't touch them. They weren't 3D. They were, you know, they were there, but I could put my hand through them. And they were extremely tall. They were probably 14 feet because my ceilings are way high. And I mean, I'm 5'6" on a good day, and they were towering over me. But, and one looked kind of female, and that's the one that follows me the most or that I hear. And sometimes I don't even see her, but I will like hear her in my head. When we talked to both of them, there was an actual movement of the mouth. It was all like inner, which if you listen to anybody now, I mean, which I'm kind of obsessed with it. I kind of like listen to everybody and they all say the same thing. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, wow, they're listening to me, they can hear me, or I'm thinking something and they are answering me and I can hear it.
Mm.
So sometimes I can't see them, But like one time I walked by these flowers and I just heard mom. And it's like I had this knowing that I was pregnant. And I was like, turn around and I look and there's these flowers there and I'm just sitting there and it was her voice, right? And so I Googled like that, I took a picture and I'm like looking, I'm like, what kind of flower is that? And they turned out to be mums. And I immediately went to go take a pregnancy test and turned out I was pregnant. And it's interesting because my daughter knows that story and she calls me mom to this day, like the English version mom. But so yeah, I think it could be
Right.
any, I mean, I don't
When
know.
you say you see them, do you think they were actually manifesting in front of you, or was it more of a visionary experience where you're seeing them through your mind's eye? Because when I had my experiences, they never appeared, but if I would close my eyes, I could almost see like a light in the shape of a humanoid or make out some detail, but I would never really see them, if you know what I mean. How was that for you?
Yeah, for me, I literally walked out of my bedroom, down the hall, walked in the living room, and boom, they were there.
Hmm.
And not, it wasn't just them seeing it visually, but there was actually a desk and there was tons of books all around that were not normally there. I mean, big, fat, like big ancient books stacked as tall as the ceiling all around, on the table, all, as tall as they were. And I thought I was losing. First of all, I was super terrified the first time it happened. But I also, when they did leave, it was like instant. And then I thought I felt crazy. I had sit there and I was just like, what the hell? Just like, or heaven, or I'm like, did I make that up? Was I dreaming? Am I going to wake up? Am I still in a dream? I kept like trying to, and I had all this information and I just immediately start writing everything down that I could possibly remember because I was so terrified that I would wake up and not remember. So I was like, I'm going to write it down. The more I could write it kinetically, I felt like even if I woke up, I would still hold it better, just like regular dreams. And but I never did wake up. And that to me, it kind of reminded. Did you ever watch Star Trek when they would
Yeah.
like beam? It was like that, but there was no portal to beam. Like they just were there, and that I think maybe like a different dimension that our spectrum doesn't see, or maybe we do sometimes out the corner of our eye or something. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you where you're like, what was
Yeah.
that? And then nothing's really there, but it really maybe something is there. Um, but the light was able to be manifest for like that period of time, and then it was like gone, and then I was just like, what? Very strange.
Yeah. Earlier, I had mentioned that right now there's a lot of people becoming aware of things, and there's a lot of theories, a lot of considerations and possibilities. But unfortunately, there's also a lot of bad theories, bad information circulating around, and a lot of negativity. When it comes to the nature of this experience, there have been some very unsettling theories come out from within the spiritual community, within the conspiracy community, mainly that what we're experiencing, what this experience is some sort of prison planet that we are being used to harvest our energy, and it is negative intelligences and entities that are in control of everything. And to me, that's a very negative perspective. I do have guests on that share this possibility just because I like exploring all the possibilities. And there may be elements to that in our reality, but in many shows recently, I've been sharing the understanding that what this reality is heavily based on our perception of it and what we make of it. And if we are believing that we're in a prison planet trapped by negative entities, in a way that may be able to manifest in our lives and perpetuate itself and become a reality. But on the other end, if we have a perception that this life, this reality is for us to learn and grow and experience, and that there are many layers beyond that there are positive layers beyond, and that what we are here to do is experience both the negative and positive so that we can become better as spiritual beings. But I want to get your understanding and perspective on this. And what would you tell those people that are in that negative space?
Yeah, for me, whether it is a quote prison or not, I look at everything like Earth School. Like, I kind of agree with you about, why look at everything with the glass half empty situation. It's what we make of it. And even all the doom and gloom that's been spoken over, like the financial this, or, whatever the 2025 and on and all the
Mm-hmm.
plans and stuff. It's like, I believe that we can create a new Earth, and I believe that we have the technology within us to do and create anything. And we can kind of shift timelines, or not kind of, we can shift timelines and create something really powerfully different. And it doesn't even have to take like the whole world to do it. We can do it with just a few of us with a tipping point. And yes, there are the powers to be that think that they're in a controlling position, but also there's been so much disclosure, so much has come out. I think that there's going to continue to be more disclosure and more truth coming out. There's things being exposed. I think they've overplayed their hand a lot in the last few years, to the point where people are like scratching their head and saying like, this just doesn't make sense, because it doesn't. I mean, the whole point is to scramble everybody, everyone confused, and to have this control when these guys are just like the very small percent, and so when we come together as a collective and we decide, you know what, enough is enough, bro. Like, it's too much. And I don't have you experienced like people waking up like crazy? Because I'm seeing people not wanting to do this thing anymore and
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and they're just like people that I never thought would come around, or like coming and asking questions, or I'm seeing them post and I'm like, oh, I've only been saying that for 2 decades, but okay, that's cool, and it's sometimes it's a little bit like hard, because it's like you know, I went through the whole pioneering
Right,
part of
right.
that, but at the same time, it's like kind of cool. And thank God that everyone is coming together and maybe seeing things
Mm-hmm.
differently for a change. And yeah, I don't know. Are you seeing a lot
Definitely.
more people
And I
wake?
want to get into that later, the changes that are occurring right now, the emerging consensus that we're entering this new era. I'd love to get your thoughts on what that's all about. But earlier, you mentioned timelines. You mentioned it a couple of times, and this is a fascinating possibility to me that we're constantly shifting to different realities simply based on our own perception. I'm starting to think of it like a choose your own adventure reality where anything is really possible. And once you become aware of that and tune into your mission here, and even within that mission, I believe there's multiple timelines and possibilities to reach the same outcome of why you were here. But again, it's based on your perception of things, how you're looking at things, and the way you view things can take you on a different path and put you in essentially a different reality. Do you think this is why we're experiencing the strange things in our reality, like Mandela effects and other subtle changes that some people are noticing?
Absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, it's awareness is key. And I think the more that we wake up and do the inner work individually, this is just adding like compound interest to the collective, because we have a biofield, and then plants and animals have their own biofield, but the earth itself has the Schumann resonance, or the biofield as well. And so, instead of having that idea like, oh, I got to change them, or I got to make them think like me, or all the stuff that they try to play on us, um if we could have just the insight to and the awareness to go deep within and go, you know what, I'm just choosing sovereignty, and I'm going to look at any kind of blind spots that I have and work on me. As we work on us, that changes our field, which does add to the collective, which can shift the timeline for the whole earth. Instead, of course, we have our own paths, which can obviously change to so many different opportunities, and it's limitless, and how the directions we can go. But I feel like we're constantly recalculating and recalculating, recalculating with every thought and every word and every choice. And then as a collective, we're doing the same thing. And one of the things that I saw when those beings came was that field, and how not only it radiates out, but it also magnetizes. So we are changing things through electrics constantly in this field. Some people's field is an average of 4 to 5 feet, and then some people are 20 feet, depending on the consciousness. And what I've done with my testing is I've noticed that people who have really low consciousness have actually like little to zero field. And some people are even inverted in their field, which means they have to siphon off someone else just to feel alive or generate their own energy, because they literally cannot get their own, which sucks. And that's what I think a lot of these guys who think they're in control, this small percent of people who are thinking they're calling the shots, is they're trying to use things like media and sports and weather and all these manipulations, the chemtrails, putting stuff in the food, sorry about that, and just all this stuff to keep us dumb, to keep us in the dark, fluoride, and all the things that are used against us to even use our own technology to create something for them, like putting things in movies that, oh, everyone goes to that movie and they all envision it, and then guess what, it becomes a reality and it becomes true, because first of all, they have to tell us or they get bad karma. But second of all, when they show us that, they know that they can use us to create what they wanted the whole time. So, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of how I look at
I
it.
agree. I think that these parasites at the very top do not have the capability to create like the rest of humanity. There's something missing within them for whatever reason. They don't have the same creative abilities. They use us to achieve what they're trying to do, and they do that through mind control manipulation, the media, propaganda, fear techniques, and that keeps us in line and it keeps us going in the directions that they want us to go. But it seems that something happened a few years ago whenever they tried to roll out that whole scamdemic thing, and people just started to become aware of it, and it started to change everything. There was this huge ripple effect, and now we are where we are now. And although there's a lot of chaos and confusion, there are so many people that are checking out of the things that don't serve humanity, that are built within this system to try and control us. So I am really optimistic about those things.
Yeah, you know what else too is shows like what you have are huge, because one of the things I think that they overplayed when they were using media, I think people started noticing like every news channel, you've seen those commercials where it's like these sound bites
The
that are like the
same
same, the same, the
Mockingbird, yeah.
same. Yeah, total Mockingbird situation. And so that's, I think, caused people to go, oh, I'm not watching anymore. I mean, people aren't watching the movies. People aren't watching, especially with all the Diddy and the Epstein, I don't know if I could say all
Yeah, you
that,
say whatever
but
you want.
um, they were completely, blackmailed into just also paying their bid so they can perform, literally preform and put this, whatever out there for us to connect with, which has backfired again. And, again, more truth is coming out. Obviously, not all of it. I can't wait for all of it. And I hope that they do. And I hope something doesn't just happen to the dude, just like the other guy, left. But, yeah, I think that how many podcasts have like been born in the last 4 years?
Yeah.
Like there people like Joe Rogan and all these other people, they're bringing out actual truth. that has been censored. I mean, they took my whole channel
Same here.
down for talking.
Same here. Oh yeah.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. I mean, so they don't want us saying, some of this stuff that is actual truth. And I had to start completely over. It's not stopping me. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. If I have to mime things or do sign language or put up a sheet of paper or whatever, there's no stopping the truth. Truth is still truth, no matter what. And there's not a way to stop the
Mm.
truth. And people will get there. And then it's so crazy though. Don't you still run into some people who are just like, no way, still just like digging in their
Mm.
heels? And I don't know what that is. Do you? Like, what the
There's
hell?
many possibilities. I try not to look too deep into it and focus on my own thing, like you were saying earlier, but it is baffling how many people are still have their head buried so far in the sand that they don't understand that they are not only participating with all these anti human agendas, they're perpetuating it. It could be that they just are afraid to. They're afraid of losing what they have in this material reality. There's the NPC theory going around, which I don't really subscribe to that much. I think we all have the ability to connect with the divine. There's just some people that are a little bit deeper under the radar to where they can't connect that easily. But it is very interesting, though. One of the things I wanted to get into with you today is the science of miracles. Miracles to me can be many, many different things. In my own life, I believe I've experienced many miracles, especially in my earlier days when I was not aware and I was doing very dangerous things. There have been several situations where my life has literally been saved miraculously. And every time I tell the stories, hearing it back myself, it's like that is almost impossible to have unfolded the way that it did. And I think it can also come in the form of meeting certain people that change your life, synchronicities, messages from the universe. So, miracles for me manifest more since I've been aware of it, mostly in the form of synchronicities and these little nudges and hints that push me in certain directions or are sort of confirmations for me in certain ways. But talk a little bit about miracles and the science of miracles and what you've been looking at.
Yes, I love synchronicities and I love signs, and signs follow those who believe. And the more you invest, I love that word believe, by the way. So it's to be alive in something. So if you are alive in signs and you expect them and you believe in them and you just look for them, they show up. And you mentioned confirmation. Like for me, if I am in a situation where I'm have a choice to make, I will put a fleece out or, just be like, hey, show me what to do and look for something external because my energy field will magnetize that to me to show me like what is going on. But going back to creating miracles, that was part of what I was shown with these beings. And when I was writing everything down, I was getting graphs and charts and pictures and I mean stuff like quantum physics. I had to actually like look up like echo waves
Hmm.
and standing waves and um, the phantom effect and showing different things about equations in the field and the positives and the negatives and how things like work out and energetic purgatory and frequency hopping and things that I had to Google and be like, what is that? And some of them weren't like frequency hopping wasn't even in there. But for me, I knew that we could shift timelines just by doing different things and putting out different equations in the field, which would cause that radiation, but also bring a magnet to our situation. And we can be thriving magnets, meaning we we're always going to get what we are. So as we focus our energies on certain things, that's what we're going to get. We make room for what we focus on. And so that's why certain people who have this like trauma loop where they're seeing the same thing over and over and they're just like, oh my God, it's not quitting the job necessarily or the boyfriend or the husband or the wife that's going to fix
Hmm.
things sometimes. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, you've done this three times in three different jobs and three different marriages. the common denominator is
Right.
who, and so sometimes it's like a genetic radiation that's going out into the field. Sometimes it's like a subconscious program that's there that's going to the field where they have some negative numbers, which will pull in some equations that aren't really the best or the funnest. I say the best because just because it's bad doesn't mean it's not
Mm.
good. There is really no good and bad. Like sometimes bringing in bad is the wake up to change the field projection so you can get better numbers out, which will cause a better income. And so there's this outcome and there's this income and there's this torrid of in and out and in and out. And, we're constantly creating in this kind of field. And I don't know if you ever watched like Charlie Brown,
Hmm.
but there was that guy who had like the
Yeah.
blanket and he had
Pigpen.
like this dust. Yeah. And I talk about that in my first book, Keys to Third Heaven. And, it's like, we could just kind of be like, oh, the Eeyore of civilization, everything's terrible and kind of have that attitude. Or I was thinking about how I grew up specifically, and one of the things that was super common in my house is if something terrible went on, I would, God bless my mom, but I would tell my mom like, oh, this happened today. And she'd be like, there's always something. And she didn't mean it like,
Yeah.
yay, things are fun, exciting. She meant it like, yep, that's what you should expect because that's always going to happen. And so I realized that that was like in my program. And so it was coming back and coming back and coming back until one day I was like, why does this keep happening? And I remember that came to my mind of that specific saying. And so I was like, huh, well, what would be? I was like, that's a crappy program. Like, let's think of something better. And I thought about like Murphy's Law, like if anything bad's going to happen, it's going to happen. I was like, this is terrible. So then one day I was like watching like TV and a commercial came through and Dr. Phil comes on. And Dr. Phil is like talking about, well, the best way to create the future is to look at the past. But the best way to predict the future is to look at the past. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's a better one. And then I started thinking about it. It's like, oh, what if you had a really shitty past? Like, that's kind of effed up. It's like, why would you want to have that in your future
Right.
too? So I was like, there's got to be something better to replace that program. And like as soon as I said it out loud, I like go on my phone and the first like meme that kind of pops up was a quote by Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it."
Mm.
And I was like, boom, that is it. I was like, wow, because honestly, that means we could do
Yeah.
anything.
I like that.
Like it doesn't matter what happened before. Like if you have the most terrible anything, even 2 seconds ago, you can instantly pivot. As fast as we can all think about the Statue of Liberty right now and really focus on seeing her with her torch. We're in New York, we're looking up. We can also go, now look at the Eiffel Tower and just picture that and be that. And that's as fast as our chemistry changes, as fast as our radiation changes, as fast as the magnet changes. And we can be a thriving magnet where we magnetize, abundance and peace and harmony and fun and ease and all of those things. And or we can stay in that or like, oh crap, everything sucks, and I think friendships are like really important because that can be caught. Um, those fields are not only physical fields, but they're electronic, even online, like who you watch on TV, what music you're listening to. I mean, it's pretty limitless in how those merge. But they say that the top 5 people that you spend the most time with, even if it's electronic or reading a book or physical person, you are going to be like those people. And just like if you buy a house in a subdivision where maybe that house is only $200,000, if you are in a subdivision where there's $1 million properties all around you, your equity literally goes up instantly as soon as you sign that paperwork because you're in that subdivision. And that's how we can be. And that's why mentoring is really important. That's why relationships are really important. That's why I'm super cautious with where I invest my actual energy and who I'm hanging out with, even if it's family. I'm not a big believer in like canceling. I think that's kind of like a terrible program as well. And 1 in 4 people are estranged from family members right now. I'm, which is on a rise. I mean, that's a rise. It used to be 1 in 500 just a few years ago. But I do think, that you can cautiously love people, hang out with them, and just maybe not agree, but not invest so much like heart in any kind of outcome, necessarily, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
As
Am
you're
I,
talking,
is
I
anything I'm
was
saying?
thinking about the possibility of a reality of pure love and miracles, and then this dense material reality. And the more that those miracles present themselves or we become aware of it, the more we can gravitate towards that. And I think we always have to have a balance as long as we're on this planet. We still have to have some level of grounding and awareness of the material. But even if we are completely lost, completely asleep, I've understood many circumstances, and there have been many people who have shared stories about how the miracle will present itself to them. And then it'd be up to that person to recognize it and start following the messages or ignore it and continue to do the same thing. But it seems once it's recognized, the opportunity to see more and more and experience better in your life, there's no limit to it, it seems.
Absolutely. And again, going back to, you mentioned this a few times, the
Mm.
miracle. So a miracle can be as little as, you woke up this morning and you're breathing. you
Right.
know um You could, the word, even in scripture, which again, I look at the Bible more like quantum physics, but the word heal or healing is mentioned, I forget how many times, but most of the word healing is therapeo, which means healing over time, meaning it wasn't like this instant thing where someone just touched someone and there was like this huge thing, but it was through therapy, through something over time of weeks and weeks and weeks, or maybe months or years. But even the definition of miracle, like you said, it could be the synchronicity, the running into someone, the dream that you had. And sometimes a miracle is a catastrophe, or, something dark and terrible that we look at as bad. I mean, I've known people who got cancer, and that was the biggest teacher ever, and they just turned into this whole other person, healed themselves, and that was the door that gave them a whole different perspective and a whole new life. um you know what I mean? So it's not so black and white. I know a lot of people just, technically will look at the word miracle and they think that there's some, rainbow that appears in the sky, or, some crazy like huge thing. But for me, miracles can be little, big, good, bad. It just depends on perspective.
Earlier, you mentioned energetic purgatory. Tell us a little bit more about this. I think you got into it a little bit, how we stay stuck in these frequencies and it seems like an endless cycle. But talk a little bit more about that, maybe how to become aware and escape it.
Yes. So this girl is stuck in energetic purgatory. So when we send out a radiation, there's what they call an echo wave. It comes back to see, like where we really are on our thoughts, what we're talking about, what we're feeling. It also looks at the radiation of every cell in our body, every organ, our ancestral DNA. Everything has a number, everything's an equation. And so you can be thinking about something, and you can be positive in that thinking, like, oh, I'm going to be a billionaire. But if in your heart you're like, yeah, my grandma tried to do that and that didn't work out too well, or even maybe you had, not you yourself, but a person could be like, maybe they tried a business and it failed like 2 or 3 times or even once. And it's like, there's that equation there that somehow there's a fear of like, maybe this won't work out. And so there's like this one step forward, two step back, or in the book, I talk about literal timeline equations where it's like one plus one plus one, negative three, negative two, plus one. You know, I'm not a math person, but they start to cancel each other out. And then you're just here, right? So it's like, are we moving? Are we going forward? Is there any traction here, or are we just going to be stuck? And so I like to help people understand that when we remember, and the book is called The Science of Miracles, Remembering the Frequency of Love, and remembering has a dash. It's remember to re means again, and member as that alignment with God, who or source, creator, whatever you want to call that thing, um, is within ourselves. We have that technology to be gods and to create. And so when we're in alignment with that, and we are in alignment with love, who is God, then we can send that radiation and go out. But if there's any kind of hidden stuff and or any kind of programming even in the subconscious that we're not even aware of yet, we can get that, miss. And um that's why it's good to kind of like look and see, what needs to be cleared. What am I thinking? I'm always constantly thinking like, well, what am I thinking? Because we're on all these like autopilot, sometimes I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, I was driving and I don't even know how I got here. And I was just thinking about a million things and it just somehow showed up over here. And I think that was scary, but we think so much that we don't even realize what we're thinking about. And when I started to really be aware of what I'm thinking about and what I'm talking about, and what I'm feeling, and put some traction in letting that be like love. And anytime something would come in my head, like, oh God, she doesn't like me, or this is going to happen, or fear this will happen, or whatever, if I could stop myself instantly and replace it with something positive, like maybe a decree, or God is the only power and presence acting here, or only God touches me, or I'm victorious, thriving in abundance, or just some kind of mantra to kind of replace it, that trips the trap for me in a way, because it gives me something to focus on that isn't negative, and can I override that frequency, and that goes out, and then we start like getting entrained to a new program of, oh well, this is actually my belief now. And then you start getting these little miracles where like a check comes in the mail, or this job opportunity, or this new person shows up, and then you're like, hey, that was kind of working, I'm going to keep doing that. And then you get more and more, and then you're like addicted to it in a good way. It's positive brainwashing,
Yeah.
right? And being aware that you can still think and talk and feel the same positivity, but if that subconscious has something in there that you're not even aware of yet, that can trip you up too. So it's like it's just constant being aware and constant clearing, and just life itself, things happen, and it's like, okay, why did I create that?
Mm.
And really looking at me as being the source of everything that's being created, instead of blame shifting and pointing fingers and being like, he did that to me. It's like, no, I created it for some kind of reason, and looking at it as a gift and going, you know what, thank you for showing me that that's still here. And now I'm going to go clear that. And so I can get a different outcome.
I wanted to talk a little bit about conscious language. This is something that I think we've collectively lost a huge understanding of. You also work with frequencies, and this ties in. I believe that frequency is everything in our reality, and our words and the way that we use them have incredible powers. They can even shape aspects of our realities. They've been used since ancient times with ritual and what we understand as magic, and our language is extremely important, and I think that many people have lost that understanding and take it for granted. So let's talk a little bit about what you've learned about conscious language and how we can maybe start to remember how to utilize our language.
Yeah, so my mentor, who's now passed, is Robert Tennyson Stevenson, and he pioneered the whole conscious language thing. And What I'm kind of a geek when it comes to science, and one of the things that he was showing us is like saying certain word patterns would cause the different things within your own body, like saying things like "I
Mm-hmm.
can't" constantly, um, would cause cancer, or saying "I doubt it." That would cause phlegm in the body, cancel clear, all of this. I don't want that in my field, but um, I actually went through my own health crisis or opportunity, I should say. And I met him because he was doing a bioholography class in North Carolina. And I was doing all these natural things to clear. And I was a little bit concerned about leaving for a week to go take the certification when I wouldn't be able to do all those modalities like red light therapy, biofeedback, IVs, lasers, ozone therapy, blah, 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 doing all the things. I'm like, how am I going to do that up there? But I kept muscle testing and I kept getting to go. So I go up there and he uses me as an example, not knowing anything that's going on with me, and he puts my eye on a big screen and he's looking at my eye. There's about 40 people in there. And there was these four blue dots in one of my eyes. I can't remember which one, but he said, "When did you choose to die?" I was like, kind of pissed off. Actually, I was did not say that, but I'm thinking, what the heck, I was like, if you knew everything that I do on the planet every day to stay on the planet, you would not accuse me of that. Kind of pissed me off. And he's like, well, those things in your eye are death wishes. And he's like, so at one point you've chosen at least four times to go. So he's like, have you ever said anything like, I'm done, cancel clear? And I was like, doesn't everybody? And then he was like, have you ever said things like, I don't want to do this anymore, cancel clear, or I'm so over this, cancel clear, or whatever. And I was like, yeah, everybody says that, And he's like, right, well, your subconscious is literal. And when we say those things, the subconscious is like, okay, and it starts to make that happen because it's like they're just following your direction. And so he said, I want you to say, I can and I am. And I was like, I'm standing in front of 40 people and I'm like, I can and I am. And he's like, no, say it again. And I was like, said it again. He's like, no, say it like you mean it. And I was like, I can't and I am. And he was like, now say it like your life depends on it. And I was like, so I got real serious and I was like, I can and I am. I can and I am. And I'm just like feeling it in my body. He was like, feel it in your cells, put your me into it, get mean about it. So I'm saying it and I'm realizing like I'm crying, like tears. I'm really feeling I can and I am, I can and I am. And all of a sudden I felt like discomfort in my lower like reproductive area. And I was like, what the heck? So I was like, I gotta go, excuse me, run to the bathroom. I go in there and like, dude, the stuff that, not to be gross, but stuff started coming out like crazy. And I've had 7 miscarriages, but what I saw was unidentifiable.
Wow.
And my left brain was like, that's cancer. And my right brain was like, that's cancer. My left brain was like, oh my God, this is not happening. This is not happening, and so I was just like, that. And all of a sudden I heard, look in your eye. And I remembered I had like a magnifying glass in my pocket because they'd given all of us one to look at each other's eyes during the class and stuff. So I like run up to the mirror and I'm looking and I noticed all of those four dots now had like this little curve, like hook on them, like a line that kind of went around. And I'm like, that was literally not there 7 minutes ago. So I like go back and I run up to him. He's in the middle of teaching, and I'm like, dude, like you will not believe what just came out of me. And he makes like a poop joke, and everyone laughs, and I'm just like, no, 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 for real, like seriously, I think I just passed everything. And he's like, and I was like, and look at my eye. And so he's like, well, let's look at your eye. So he puts it on there, puts it on the screen, and he shows everybody those hooks. I said, what is that? And he was like, Angel, you're reversing it. He was like, those are healing hooks, or he called them, choose to remember the name of it, but shepherd's rods or healing hooks, and he's like reversing like words, frequency, music, like everything is frequency. And I was like, whoa. And my mind, Chris, like even after he showed me that, like I still had like a few days to get home before this thing was over, and I was battling like going, oh my God, like I need to see a doctor. I want to know, like, this isn't happening. It is happening. Like, and I had to keep replacing, like, I am thriving. I am abundant. I am, divine
Mm.
health. Like, and just replace, replace, replace instead of all that fear. And when I got home, I had four doctors who verified, like, you're clear.
Wow.
And so words are huge for me. I made a card deck of crystals, oils, and decrees because there's a frequency to oils, to crystals, and to decrees. And when we can align that, just like this, there's an anchor or there's power in these things. And if we hold on to it and we participate in that, um, number one, we can prevent things from happening and or shift the reality that we're currently in.
Mm. I noticed you were saying cancel clear after those negative phrases or words. Is this something that you'd recommend people do if they're becoming aware of saying those negative things?
Absolutely, because again, that's an energy. It'd be way better to like self-edit before it even comes
Mm.
out, and I do my best to to kind of shear away anything. When I first met Bob, I I was so quiet because I realized what I was saying, and there was just so much that I was saying. And there's a lot of things culturally that we
Hmm.
say that are not really serving us, even in joking. And I don't want to say the things, but I think you know what there's so many
Right.
of them. And so yeah, to cancel clear, it'd be better not to say it at all, but sometimes things just
Yeah.
come out still. And I will immediately cancel clear them because I don't want that energy in my field at all to do any negative equations or for my subconscious to go, huh? And start
Mm.
participating.
The programming for a very long time, it just comes out of our media, our music, the people that we look up
Music.
to. Music is a very huge one. And I think for the longest time, it was used to perception manage and keep people in this negative programming. And it's still of course occurring like that, but I do see that more people are becoming aware of it and checking out of listening to that mainstream nonsense and going more with independent music and content creators and entertainment. So again, I'm very encouraged about those things happening. And speaking of that, to close out on, I'd love to get your thoughts on where we're at collectively, what this era means for everyone. We were talking about earlier, there's so many people that are waking up, and I talk to a lot of people like yourself who have intuitive abilities, connections with spirit, and deeper understandings of things. And there's this emerging consensus that we are going to be entering an era where things will be better for humanity and we're going to reject the things that don't serve us. There may be a little bit of chaos and turmoil with getting there, but it's inevitable that that's where we're headed. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I find it interesting that there's so many people that have this intuitive understanding and belief that that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I actually got about a year ago, I was driving down the highway and I heard that we were entering into a golden age. And I didn't even know what that meant. And I got on my podcast that night and I was like, does anybody know what that is? And I was like Googling it and looking it up. And now it's being thrown around like everywhere. Even when I was driving, I was like, what? Golden age? And then like I drive by and there's this like building and I guess it was like a nursing home or something, and it said the golden age, and I'm like, okay, I hear you, the synchronicities, but um, yeah, I think that again, what we focus on, we make room for, and we can either put our attention on, the terrible movies and the doom and gloom talkers and, just all of that, or we can replace that with something that we choose. I choose to voice my choice, and I choose to keep my headspace in something that I choose to create and that that reality that I want to live in. There's a group of friends of mine. Well, I don't say, I use that word very literally. So some acquaintance people that meet up quite often here locally, they're in like a group chat, and they had sent me this like 2025 prophecy thing. And they're like, oh, listen to it. It's so good, blah, blah, blah. And I put it on for like a couple minutes, and this lady is just talking about how the suffering of humanity that's about to come and just blah blah blah, cancel clear. And she just goes on and on and on. And so I just stopped it and I put in the group, I was like, hey, being serious, like honest question, I started listening to this. Does it get to like a hope part anywhere soon? Because I don't want to really put my attention on anything that is just going to continue to be, 2 hours of
Yeah.
this and or whatever,
Yeah.
And then they came back and they were like, oh, well, it's all perspective. And she's just talking about how eventually we'll have a new, it's like whatever, anything that we put our attention on it has the opportunity to bait us into that technology to create. And so I am very like, what are those horses that wear those things? I'm like super mindful and just clear on what I'm going to look at, what I'm going to listen to, these gates, what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to feel. I'm very mindful of like movies, music, even labels on clothing or nail polish or anything, because it's all a part of what we choose in our reality. And there can be people who are having the shittiest reality while other people are just maximizing like their highest place of abundance and thriving and relationships simultaneously at the same, literally at the same time. And I choose to be someone who's thriving and having abundance and health and great relationships and my own new earth. And maybe there'll be a split or something. I think there
Yeah.
kind of is
Yeah.
dimensionally, what are your
I'd
thoughts
have
on
to
that?
agree. I think it's going to be a split that won't be very noticeable. Probably more like we're just going to gravitate towards the people that align with our energies and what we're producing in our life, and the people on the negative side won't even be noticed or won't be around, and we'll just be able to thrive based on our own perceptions. Who knows, though? I do think that we're entering a very special time, and there's some incredible things happening right now. And Dr. Sharnael, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a great conversation. I'd definitely love to have you back on. There's much more we can get into. Before you go, let the audience know how they can find out more about you and some of the things that you offer.
Absolutely. If you go to my website, drsharnael.com, it's DrSharnael, you can actually get a free gift. Right now, I have a thing on there where if you just log in, send your email, I have a teaching on the quantum connection to clearing trauma and just having a quantum life. But yeah, there's all kinds of services on there that I do long distance. There's online courses. My books are on there. I have a lot of cute and like fun techie things that I'm friends with some inventors that made like some zappers and some grounding devices and some fun things like that. I have my card deck, and I use essential oils, and there's a specific kind that I absolutely love that have really, really high testing frequency oils. But yeah, my podcast is there. There's all kinds of fun things, and I would definitely love to come back anytime. You just tell me when. And I hope to see some of you guys. I appreciate you having me and meeting your people. And hope that I meet you guys in real life somewhere. I do miss conferences because, that physical, like hugging and signing books. I will be at Conscious Life
Oh,
Expo
excellent.
in February in LA if it's not burned down.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Jesus, right?
Right on.
Another psyop.
Well, Dr. Sharnael, thank you so much. We'll definitely do this again. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We will talk again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then.